Ready? Okay, so seems like we're live now.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for another exciting episode of Investor Thought Leadership. So, as you know, we are covering stories and discovering insights about how people are raising investments. Fix this. Okay, cool. There you go. Apologies for that. It's fixed. That was a glitch on my end. Anyways, moving on, I have got the phenomenal Saika Bennett joining us today from Riyadh live. Good morning, Saika. I know it's a little early for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you happen to be founder for Haya, the new platform coming out of Middle East, which is connecting startups with investors. So let's start with a brief intro about yourself. We'd love to know who you are, why you are in this space, and what made you come up with Aya as the bridge between investors and startups across the globe, especially those who are looking for scaling in the Middle East countries. Over to you.
For sure. So pleasure to be here, everybody. Thank you so much as part of this series. A pleasure to share any information I could extend to the startups and the investors of Pakistan and globally. So the reason why I started, very interesting, I think as a founder, as an entrepreneur, I've spent half of my life building startups. So I totally understand that side. I've also built ventures, so I've experienced the pain of hiring. And globally, I would say that there's new markets that startups can explore. There's also new investing for. And to be honest, I've been in AI for the last 7 years, and it felt like a path to deploy some of this magic into the investor startup side. And I've been in the Middle East for 4 years, and Saudi Arabia is absolutely exploding in terms of growth and projects. So I can sat with a lot of the government leaders and the leaders of the Vision 2030 projects, and I kept saying, what do you need? Do you think you need? And everybody needed the same thing, which was innovation. We want to know about startups and investors wanted to invest in the next big thing. So I was in the intersection of this ecosystem. And then it was like a light bulb moment, which was, how about I combine all of this together and put it into Aya, which means miracle, by the way, I feel everybody needs. And this is what we're trying to do. And and it just felt like a natural place to be based in and start from Saudi Arabia to the world. Right decision because of everything that's unfolded in the last 2 years.
That's wonderful. So, how do you see the overall investment landscape changing over the last couple of years? Saudi is, very on a very fast scale pace. They are moving towards, digitizing the entire economy and shifting from traditional businesses to tech-based businesses. How do you see the landscape of investments changing in the region?
So it's a very interesting place because I remember very clearly having conversations with investors from the US, for example, right? When I used to travel to the West Coast, would say they don't know enough about the Middle East at all. And it's not an area that interests them. Now their funds are here. They actually have funds in Saudi Arabia looking at deals. So I'd say the investor landscape's changed, paying attention to what Saudi Arabia is doing. So investors that do have funds and know about their local market sense are now starting to look at 2 things. Number one, how can we make our extend to other areas like Saudi Arabia, where we also want some of that for our companies, right? And number two, how can we get in on the next big thing? Because that's exactly what companies like OpenAI, DeepSeek, all of this going on, it's totally demonstrated to the world is while you're quietly staying your mandates, there's some exciting stuff going on behind the scenes, and the investor's job always is to catch that at time so they have a great outcome, right, and a return. And it seems like more investors, you're in competition with more investors now because there's just so much going on. But then the flip side of that also have a responsibility to their LPs in terms of the money that they've raised. So it must be soothing right now for investors to figure out where are the hottest startups, who's $1 million, a fund that is $1 million and we can deploy 100,000, 500,000, where should we put it? And there's always an element of risk. Investors are not with crystal balls where they can see everything into the future. So it's always going to be a risk. It's just about how now I believe, investors can make more speedy investments because of AI. They can the reach can go even beyond in a way which can accelerate having to manually go through pitch decks, for example, right? That's just one example of things can be accelerated. And also the pain isn't just on the investor side, it's also the startups, feeling like they need investment for that next growth. OpenAI, all of these companies could not do what they're doing if they didn't have these investments. They could also be just in a different part of the world, and maybe examples of companies like that just didn't get the funding, right? Didn't have the network. So I think investors come in all shapes and sizes, all different mandates, but the one thing they all have in common is they do want to invest in the next big thing, right? And yeah.
So when you look at the Saudi market, what areas do you see could has potential of getting in the next unicorn from the region?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really exciting. We're not just going to have like the standard growth, and I think that's what's unique about Saudi Arabia is the Crown Prince, as we all know, set a very goal of Vision 2030, which I think a lot of people didn't actually have conversations when I travel. People say, is it happening? Is it real? And it is the same thing that we get asked. And I'm like, yeah, it absolutely is real. Saudi Arabia didn't have the legacy, right? It didn't have like 100 years, 200 years, slowly build up the ecosystem. Because, a lot of countries around the world have had growth. They've had tourism, they've had infrastructure, had like the basics, if you like. Saudi Arabia in 2019, there was no tourism here at all, right? And if you look at how the country is changing, we don't just see one or roads. If you've been out of the country for a week, you see a whole skyscraper. You see like so many things developing. The beauty of the fact that when you're starting from somewhere which is trying to catch up, it's going to overtake because the ambitions and the vision are so high. So if you look at infrastructure and you look at manufacturing, these are very like old-fashioned industries, if you like. But AI, robot, smart technology, smart homes, these are the sort of things which are being factored in and of interest to the government here, right? So when we talk about AI and we look at it touches every single industry. And the great thing is that a startup could be doing something which is practical but could just be utilized in a new way. And I think some of I wouldn't say that Vision 2030 projects, giga projects like NEOM, and you have Qiddiya, all of these new concepts, some of them are well development. That doesn't mean if their needs of innovation are met. They are still actively looking for things which could accelerate, and help and assist their projects. So I would say across everything, health, across every single industry you can imagine, there is probably a niche and a gap for something done yet.
Interesting, very interesting. I'm sorry, Saika, we lost you there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay.
So yeah, very interesting insights. And when we see the entire region developing into a tech zone, we see a lot of startups coming in. We see a lot of companies heading towards Saudi and establishing their bases in Saudi. What do you think is primarily the biggest challenge or the expectation of startups that are coming in the region? What should they look out for? I mean, everybody in Pakistan nowadays, they want to get out in Saudi and establish themselves there. Right now, we have about 100+ startups at the National Incubation Center in Islamabad, and majority of them, they are eyeing Saudi Arabia as their next destination to land and expand.
Absolutely. So I've gone through that journey, and I've gone through the startup journey. I've also worked in Dow Jones years ago in private equity venture capital. So I actually have the mindset of I can understand the investor point of view and that journey and all of the challenges that remain there. And I also understand from a practical sense, and I think this is really important, because when you see the market and you think, wow, I want to be part of that, well, good news, you can be now, right? And we're not talking about such a cultural China, right? Like if you're going to launch something in China, you have to speak the language, right? There's no getting around that. The great thing with Saudi Arabia is that, yes, a lot of the business language is English, right? And their government is very supportive in putting initiatives and things in place. I think the problem is how to access them. It's the lack of know-how, it's the lack of the network, the ecosystem, right? You almost have to be introduced by someone. And I had a network in Saudi Arabia for a very long time. So I was fortunate, but I still face challenges because that's how fast Saudi is moving. The process is on. So it really does help to kind of, you almost need someone to grab your hand and say, just take me through this initial stage. And then after that, look at the things that startups need. First of all, they need knowledge, they need information. Is it something that I even can be living, can I be there? And Riyadh is definitely the epicenter, and then you have Jeddah and Dammam, Quba, like depending on what your startup does, it might make sense to be in certain parts of Saudi Arabia. We really are, one of the biggest goals in mind was to make it much easier for startups. I've had to figure it out. Hundreds of others startups have had to figure it out. You don't have to, because we've negotiated great packages and support from the government of Saudi Arabia, and that's what I love about the support that can be given here, is they are so innovative and they are so welcoming, and the push to bring more startups here is a mandate, right? It's not just a nice to have cherry on top like some other countries are doing. It's a core focus, which means that through Aya you can create your profile, you can do a video pitch, right, explaining what your company is doing. Don't even have to worry about calling numbers from Saudi Arabia. I remember being on the phone, for someone for 1 hour, like from a mobile, calling an international number. And when you're a startup, you're trying to make everything count, right? So the little things like this do matter. So we're taking that out. So you create a pitch, you do a video, which again is autonomous. Anytime you can do this. It doesn't, there's no set Zoom call that you have to join anytime. So we're offering that flexibility. It's like, introduce yourself and your company and be clear. Create your profile. The investors know who you are. Let the government know who you are. So create your professional profile as well. And then start sharing stories about like what you need. And we have like Aya Accelerator is going to be the whole thing, right? You can actually buy into the whole soft landing, which includes the office space, especially for tech, AI, deep tech companies. These are the hubs. So if you fall into that space, the thing is, can't just have an idea. right? Saudi is too fast for us to sort of support ideas. It really has to be a working MVP to just get to that level if you can, right? Even if it's pretty basic, which is able to hit the ground and be demonstrated. And the investors, again, from here are also, right? And so they will come across. You can state your mission. So I think that's the thing, is like, it's a little bit like if you read the Quran and you pray to God, he will look after you and he'll give you what you want, right? So I feel with the platform, it's a come and do your thing, put your intention out there, and it will come to you, and someone will find you, and we will help you, right? We're your partner, not just as a doing startups a huge amount, and that's the other problem, is that there's so much going on at the moment, is all onto this bandwagon, but they're not actually got access to what actually might help you and accelerate. So we can. So that's number one. And so shock of moving to another country and having that ecosystem, and even having commercial introductions, right? It's the next thing, is once you're set up, no point sitting here set up and not having the network. So we introduce you to the network, right? We introduce you. Companies can also find you. So Vision 2030 projects can find you on Aya. They will log in, put a, whatever example, it's something to do with cybersecurity, robotics. They can write it in, they can search by industry, by stage, and they will find you and they will contact you. They'll watch your video, and if they're interested, they'll contact you. So I think the main thing here for startups is that this is not like the answer to everything, right? I'm not saying that we are like your answer to everything. No, what we're trying to do is accelerate and help and make you all be in the same room, right? So you can meet each other and be discovered, and we're giving you a stage. In itself is a big step forward from the chaos and the confusion which people somewhere like Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely. So, guys, you've heard it. Saudi is the next place, and you just heard Shaika sharing the important verticals. Shaika, you mentioned about startups having an MVP. How does that differ for, and how's the landscape for these startups that have developed an MVP and have some basic traction, as compared to someone who's got some good numbers in any other part of the region that they are operating in? Let's say in Pakistan, they're operating and they've got significant traction. They've done a good job. They have raised a series round, and now if they want to move to Saudi, how easy it is going to be for them as compared to someone who just has an MVP?
Yeah. So I would say, depending on what, right? A lot of it's going to be like, wow, is this the first time we're seeing this? And I do believe there's a lot of founders around the world that are doing things with excellent fit for Saudi, right? And if you're one of, or if you're the rare one of, right? So if there's already 100 startups in Saudi doing things that you're doing in exactly the same way, and maybe this isn't going to be exactly the place. So I think that's part of also us helping to find that uniqueness. But I would also say the market is big enough for more than one company, right? So even if there is one, but you're doing it, like look at DeepSeek and OpenAI. Again, look at the difference. Like if something is cheaper to think is formed in a slightly different way, you have an edge, or there's a reason, right? And that could still work. So if you look at things like hospitality, huge potential, huge. Like whether it's guest experience, whether it's travel, whether it's something to do with the airline, right? Digital, like there's so going on. So if you're a startup that you already have investment, you're actually in a stronger place, because number one, you have developed something. Number two, you've had fun. Number three, you've demonstrated validation. You've demonstrated traction. So I would say government and the licensing process, this is so much more favorable to those that do have something like that, because you are required to provide documents, right? So you do need to provide like your company license, for example, and you do need to provide like some indication of tracks are and so on. So there is a screening process which we're able to fast track. right? With Aya, we are able to take it into a matter of, days or weeks as opposed to months, right? We're really able to make a huge difference there. So I would to companies, come and put yourself here. And the MVP ones, again, investors that are looking, right? Angel investors that invest between $50,000 and $100,000, right? Which is still a lot of money. And it could be, it is so much aligned with them that they're going to reach out to want to invest in your idea and then be part of bringing it to. I think this is the point, is that mindsets are different depending on what region you are in the world. And we never really know, right, as startup founders, how the market predict how things are going to be. And one of the things with Saudi is there's so much to know about it. And if you're not here in the ecosystem and you're just watching it from afar, you're not really going to get the true picture. So we're trying to give you some indication of what it's like to live here. But I truly believe when you're here, the support, all of those things matter. Like if you're in space, you don't have to find an office. You don't have to wait, 9 months, 8 months, 6 months for a license because a disappeared, right? Like there's so many things that cost you time, right? Which then is lost opportunity. And what we're trying to bring that ease in so that startups and investors, because again, investors want to see that, we've invested in this company, we think they're a match for Saudi, and we would love to hear from, again, investors, funds that have portfolios of companies, like in the link with yourself, to really scale out and see some huge success stories because of these startups getting discovered somewhere else. And I've had companies that I've seen that with from different parts of the world, and even Pakistan, right? Came here, got a contract with a hospital group, and they've absolutely rocketed. So it is here, the market is here. It's the know-how sometimes when you're outside is a little bit difficult to navigate, and we can help you.
Right. So Saika, I'm receiving a couple of questions. I'll just take two of them right now. So one of the question here is your platform sector agnostic, or you're focusing only on AI or deep tech based startups?
Yeah. So we are agnostic because some of the solutions required are more traditional, right? Like if you look at manufacturing, construction, it could be that something that's non-tech related. However, the focus and the mandate of the government and everything and the transformation that's going and the budgets being allocated, it is AI and deep that have the biggest chances, right? So I would encourage anyone that in those spaces in Pakistan to definitely pitch and register, because you might be surprised at how but we're not the only thing we probably wouldn't maybe I don't want people to be disappointed, right? So if you're doing something and it's a bricks and mortar type of setup, again, unless it's something unique, money, right, to set up, things like that. So we're probably not in the whole in that type of something that's offering something to coffee shops, right, which is going to help them grind coffee faster, which is something I wish someone would do, by the way, because
yes,
I hate queuing so long for my coffee.
Popping up. It seems like after Gawa, coffee is becoming the next favorite drink in Saudi.
Right. Well, like I say, every time I'm in a queue, there has to be another way. We grind the coffee to get me served faster. So anyone doing that, great. So there's an example of a traditional industry. But if you could do something disruptive for a traditional industry, great.
Wonderful. Another question from one of our healthcare startups. So how is the healthcare compliance mechanism in Saudi? And is your platform, you just mentioned that you're bridging this gap of regulatory compliances as well. So does that cater to healthcare? And is that a difficult terrain for someone coming out of Pakistan, or it is just like any other startup in AI or in tourism or in edtech?
Right. So I would say there's some key additional approvals, right? Like health tech, of course, is for safety reasons, right? Your compliance, like it's there for is education. So anything that for learning and so on, right? There's kind of additional approvals that need to go through the system. Also F&B. So if there's something that you're doing which is related, right? These all have additional approvals. Is that we have an ecosystem of 100 partners in our ecosystem, right? They deal with the headache. You don't need to worry about it. All you need to know is how much does it cost and how long does it take? They will deal with it. And that's what I'm saying is sometimes even to figure out like where should I go for this, even to find a lawyer and do this, right? Like there's so much to navigate. You don't need we will take care of that. And the experts that we have, because it really does take a village, are doing this so that they also are able to their mandate is to help start them and to excel, right, and accelerate. So if there is someone doing something in healthcare and say it's to do with cancer or diabetes and things which are, like the Crown Prince has set in the Vision 2030 is a healthy population, right? A higher population. So there's huge benefits and opportunities in those spaces, but there's some of it that cannot be over, like just jumped across. Is easier than what it would be if you had to figure it out. But so yes, absolutely, help is available. And they come back and say no, at least money and time to come here and figure it out. Like
Very interesting. So another angle I'd like to focus on is climate tech. In Pakistan, the entire Southeast Asia, as you know, is very severely impacted by global warming and the recent shift in climate. And we see some of the effects taking place in Saudi, in the overall GCC region as well. So how is Saudi's Vision 2030 aligned, or what sort of expectation does that vision bring forward to startups that are operating in the space of clean energy, sustainability, and in basically improving how we're living, cutting down the carbon emissions and stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So as you know, one of the biggest reasons why Vision 2030 was put together was to diversify away from oil, right? So, oil is traditionally what the kingdom is known for and has done very well out of it. But given the change in the world and how things are moving to more sustainable, and sustainability seems to be a big and sustainability is across, again, verticals, right? So if you imagine if you're able to drill through something in a more environmentally friendly way, which is exactly a startup that I know of, that I came across, which was phenomenal, and right, and they use the latest tech, and it's done faster, and it's done in a way which you can utilize the grains of being waste is utilized to be able to benefit and help out into being a product. So I would say when you look at climate, NEOM, they've got this huge, the biggest investment with hydrogen, right? And it was multi-billion-dollar, and that's a very key part of how NEOM's going to be powered. NEOM cars, right? It's a carless region, and there's going to be trains and so on connecting, and energy efficiency. In climate, the hardest thing probably to find is where would be the need, right? Where would be the need for your startup?
Okay.
We've got NEOM coming into Aya looking for, they're going to contact you. If you have another Vision 2030 project who's looking for things like the construction is huge here, right? You can imagine they're building everything from scratch. So, they're going to come and look for solutions, and they will always look for environmentally friendly, sustainable way. If you have a choice of two, they'll always go for the sustainable one, which is more, environmentally tick the box, doing something different. Always, they will not go with the one, because that again. And so, again, I go back to legacy. If you're trying to do this in the UK or the US, the problem is there's already things that I've done which are probably causing damage to the environment. They're already built, they're already done. It's very, very hard to change something which has already already been built and implemented, easier to put it in at the design stage. So that's the challenge, is that a lot of these things have to be put in at the design stage or sat at the being built stage. And now is the perfect time, because we've only got 4.5 years till 2030. So it's the best time, the projects as they're going forward. So it's definitely I think some governments, some countries, even though they talk about climate, just don't see the support there enough, right? I don't see the actual actions, whereas I would say with Saudi Arabia, they totally are committed. Again, depends on what, and if it's something that is of value, and this market might be totally ripe for that.
Perfect. Saika, you've also been a serial entrepreneur yourself. I remember you setting up a couple of things in the UK and now in Saudi. So how, if you were to draw, comparison between the two countries, how would you rate Saudi in terms of, getting a soft landing, or, how difficult has it been as compared to setting up your own venture in the UK?
Yeah. So UK is within 24 hours, very easy. And but I tell you what is hard is the ecosystem, right? I can't just go to number 10 Downing Street and knock on the Prime Minister's door and say, it's just not gonna happen, right? Like
it's not gonna happen in Pakistan as well.
Yeah, while the startup. Okay. Well, but point being is generally, for the startups, for sure. Like, it's not easy sit down with the government and tell them how you're shaping things. So that's the biggest difference, is while something might seem easier in one country, it's also legacy. Everything's been built, right? And the things that they're trying to do, and everyone is trying to transform, because the ones that get left behind will be the ones that are slow to deploy, and their startups will just leave, right? So in the UK there's some great startups, but is the government supporting them? Is the right? That's where the challenges are. Whereas in Saudi Arabia, it's like the whole country is a startup fund. Like, it's phenomenal, and the energy that brings, that just changes. Like, they've just flipped everything that normally is done, just created their own vision, right? And they totally have. And the thing I find is that, I'm sitting with deputy ministers are so approachable and hospitable. So I think that's where the Arab community in Pakistan is very similar. Like, we are human people. We like to sit down, coffee and tea with people and discuss things, right? So even though we have this tech world, human, right? Like, that's paramount. And those relationships that's how we build and do things. And that naturally, that's the type of person that I am. And I love that Saudi embraces people that are not from the region. We've come here, my home, this is where I'm going to live, and I have no plans to leave. And whereas in the UK, I find the daily grind is tough. There's strikes, there's this, there's that, right? This isn't working, this is expensive. Like, there's so many challenges. Whereas in Saudi, they make it, there are challenges, right? It's not easy. There are other types of challenges, but startup life is not easy. So I would say that the biggest difference is this country's ambition is like no other country I've seen ever around the world. And we have a chance to feed the whole world from Saudi Arabia's projects. That's how I describe it, right? Whether you're here or here, but if you're not and you're an investor, you also can benefit from this momentum. And they call it the golden decade, right? 2020 to 2030 in Saudi Arabia is referred to as a decade, a once in a lifetime opportunity that won't come around. 30 to 2040 is also the next vision. They've already set that. 2040, 2050. They've done that. It's not going to stop. This is going to constantly evolve, but the most in this decade that we are in right now.
So this decade is the one that's going to have the impact and set the ground up for the next coming 15, 20 years. Excellent. Yeah. One advice for startups that are coming into Saudi and who are looking to do business in Saudi, what would that be? from someone who has already done ventures and is very aware of the ecosystem, how things are placed in. One set of advice, what would that be?
I would say that just be patient and believe in and take ownership, right? No one's going to do something for you, right? Like even we really want to help, right? That's what we're trying to do. But if you have been given a project to perform on and you've got the investment, like go do it, like figure it out. And we're trying to help with talent because Saudi has a big initiative with Saudiization and people, right? So we're also trying, because if you win a project, the next challenge normally for startup founders isn't in Saudi because they don't have the network. So we have that. We also have that. You could go through the video, get the profiles and hire people. So we're trying to help you with growth. But just try to know that this is not a magic, this is not like going to take care of all your worries. You've got to be honest with yourself to make this change happen. You've got to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, because this is not anywhere that you go. Moving countries, launching in a new place is always going to be very unknown, and ride it through, right? Ride through that period, because some people give up too quickly, right? They haven't come here in the right way, and they get stuck, and then they leave, or they get stuck and just can't fulfill the contracts. What I would say is just be ethical, be decent, and just be true with yourself with how much you think you've got to put in, and just be transparent, right? Really, I think just be transparent. If you really think that your startup is doing something and can do something for Saudi, go for it, and believe in yourself, right? Really, really believe in yourself. I think a lot of people have inspiration from success stories, right? And I think that's one of the things that America totally did right. Like if you look at regions like San Francisco, success stories spur other founders, other startups. They're like, wow, if that person can do it, I want to do it. I want to be part of it, right? And they've been doing years, right? Years and years. And look at all of the massive tech companies that have come out of it. But guess what? The shift is now in the East. We have a chance from the East to show the West what we can do from over here. Like, don't undermine the intelligence, don't undermine the innovation, and also collaborate, because there are East and West is collaborating with investments and support and so on stage. And this is something that we didn't see before, right? Like the East part of the world was almost like serving the West, right? So I think the founders absolutely need to understand that this is my startup, but in the bigger ecosystem, what do I need to do? And it's stepping stones, right? Get to the next stepping stone, and then get to the next stepping stone, and set yourself realistic, exciting, ambitious expectations are great, but also do the day-to-day things that need to happen, right? Saudi, and then don't do a pitch, right? Don't create a profile, don't even do the video. If an investor can see a video of another startup in Pakistan and the other startup hasn't got a video, they're going to see the other one and they're going to invite you, which could lead to investment, will lead them to coming to Saudi, which will lead into a project. You really want to, so it's a mindset. It's like people want the thing, the work that's required to get those things. So you need to take that accountability, and if you really want this, that you need to get there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
And don't knock you back, right? Like just believe in yourself. I've had so many people who doubted me, so many doubted me about Saudi, why it's not nice to live there, they don't let women work, and you can't do this, and that's the worst advice people are getting. Saudi Arabia is completely the opposite. It's incredibly hospitable. The people are amazing. There's places there's funds, there's government support. Like what else could a startup want, right? From a country, have it all here. You just don't have the knowledge, and that can happen. I just want to take a quick, if it's okay. Yeah, I don't want to run out of time, but I just really want to congratulate my co-founder Naila Kiani. Many of you are aware of. She's a phenomenal woman. She's just accomplished her 12th. So I woke up this morning to the news. So she's been climbing all through the night. The third largest, the highest mountain, the peak. Big clap to Nyla.
Oh, wonderful.
12 out of 14.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
That's all right. So, and again, yeah, and she, you know, the resilience and the mindset she has to accomplish this and do these climbs is phenomenal. And I always compare that to startup life. I'm like, just keep going, just keep going. She is the example of physical side and mentally everything. Like I always ask her, you know, how do you must feel like giving up, like when you're doing this? And I said, what gets you through? Like she's been climbing hours non-stop this last summit, 20 in the dark as well, all through the night.
My goodness.
Could not do that. I could not do that. Right. And I said to her, what gets you through? Because she's absolutely exhausted, her mindset. When the physical gets worn down, the mind kicks. Exactly what I would say to startup founders is use your mind and your, you know, your strength that you have to power. When you reach the top, you know, how she must feel, worth it, right? So I want people to remember that you're on that journey, and we're here to support.
Wonderful. Congratulations to Nyla again from the entire community here. And Shaika, it was lovely talking to you. One thing that I admire you now the most is, you know, bridging this gap between different ecosystems and connecting, providing soft landing opportunities to these, you know, bunch of upcoming talented and, you know, innovators that we have. And it's not only, I think the word that you mentioned earlier in the start of the conversation, miracle, it perfectly resonates with the entire platform and how, you know, things are shaping up. And another interesting thing that I'd like to highlight is that I've got so many messages here in my inbox. People, my female founders, they're very excited to see you as a successful female entrepreneur in Saudi right now. So hats off to you for that. And you're becoming, you know, an icon for women entrepreneurs in the region.
Oh, thank you. Like there's some phenomenal talent, and I always feel like we need the support of men, right? We absolutely do. I have brothers. My dad was incredibly supportive. My brothers are amazing partners, you know, in terms of supporting Nyla to be able to go and do it. There's so much going on right now. And I think that the one thing I would always say to men and women is when you're to support each other, like everyone is happy. Right, the family grows up in a very different way, and I've been incredibly fortunate. Held me back, right? He is a traditional Pakistani dad who's very like, you know, be confident. Parents, you know, gave us the love to be able to believe in ourselves to go out into the world to do this. And I would say to happen is, you know, you go and have children, and you know, you get caught up in for trying to fulfill, because it is overwhelming, and we kind of somehow and we come back in and we do it. And I would say that I totally always looked up to women, because I'm like, her journey was a million times harder than a man's journey, and you know, I admire women out there. So here, yeah, I love that. Spurring you on. I want unicorns. I want to see them, like, you know, coming out there and changing the world, because you'll inspire millions. So I'm happy and grateful. Thank you.
Absolutely. It was lovely talking to you, Saika, and best of luck for your platform. We'll continue these sessions in the future as well, so that more and more startups can come on board Aya, and, you know, they can raise funding and they can be a part of the Saudi ecosystem. Thank you so very much for joining us today.
Great. And just thank you. We are a startup ourselves, right? So we want to start with startups being able to come in. That's the focus now. The investors is phase 2. So investors can register, but we've got so much more exciting things coming for investors and government. Be patient with us, give us feedback, and we hope that with your feedback also we can build something that you really truly can find value.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you so very much, Saika. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Cheers.
Take care, everyone. Bye.